Motivation. So today's session is going to be about motivation, and this is obviously quite a deep subject in some ways. There's lots of different layers to it, and I think today we just want to give our kind of views and thoughts on motivation, what we find works well for us, but also what we find is working well for people that we're coaching as well. So I think firstly, it's probably helpful to define a little bit more about what motivation is.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think motivation is, Kim?
I know you were going to ask me that. It's the will to do something, isn't it? The desire to do something that's going to be good for you. Probably not always good for you. The desire to do something that's going to take some effort.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. It's what I look at it as, you might be at point A now and you've chosen your goal that we talked about last week with, selecting goals and longer term planning and things like that. So now we need to get from where we are now to getting to that point. And the motivation is the power that's going to take us to that point, or the energy that's going to take us to that point as well. So it's the driver.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think it's good to understand what that is and the different forms of motivation as well. We were talking about this earlier, so what you were saying.
So most people sort of know this a bit already, is you've got two types of motivation for anything really. And one type is intrinsic and the other is extrinsic. So intrinsic is it comes from you, so how you are motivated towards something is usually more powerful than something that's motivating you on the outside towards something. So if you're, to use running as an example, if you're looking around for races to do and you see a race that's got a really cool medal, like there's some really funky looking huge medals out there, and you think, I want that medal, I'm going to do that race, that's an extrinsic motivator. So it's not come from, I need to do that race because that place means something to me, it's a really special place to me, or I want to do that race because it's going to really push me out of my comfort zone and that's what I want to explore. I want the medal, I want the t-shirt, is not as powerful as that internal factor. For me certainly it has to mean something. It has to mean something to me, and I've done races in the past that meant an awful lot to me, and races that I thought were going to get me somewhere, and definitely the ones that mean something to you are easier to get through in a way. It's easier to keep yourself motivated during the race, and it's also much more satisfying when you actually complete it, regardless of what you get at the end.
Yeah, so different types of drivers for it. Yeah, and I guess you've also got whether you're being motivated away from something or motivated towards something. So by that we mean you might be motivated through moving away from poor health towards being healthier. So you might have had a health scare and you then strongly motivated towards doing something to change that, and there might be a powerful internal motivator of, you might have children and you want to enjoy time with your children and live longer and things like that, rather than it being about how you look from the result of that.
Also what it gives you, the feeling it gives you once you get over that initial hurdle of starting to train or do something that feels a bit uncomfortable at first, for whatever reason. Most of us will change how we feel about that thing. We don't all get into running for the right reasons, do we? Like, I probably got into running more because of, like what Jayson said, that I wanted to look good. It was a vanity thing, and it became something else. So once you realise and you get over that hurdle of, this gives me enormous peace, it gives me massive stress relief, it gives me a burst of feel-good energy, and it makes me healthy, that's a huge motivator, rather than just, I want to lose a few pounds for a wedding or a holiday.
Yeah, so it can kind of evolve. It doesn't necessarily have to, you don't always have to be motivated by the same, or by, for the same reasons.
And if you're looking to find motivation, so if at the moment your races have been cancelled, and that was your main motivation for training, suddenly you're going, well, what's the point in me training? Try and think about those things that it gives you and those feelings that it gives you. Once you get your trainers on and you step out of the door, that's the biggest hurdle. Even if you only do 10 minutes around the block, you're going to feel better for it regardless. And I think, again, we were talking about this earlier, if you're looking outward for motivation and you're going, right, I need to find someone to get me motivated, again, that's something that's going to be problematic along the way. So we coach people, again, for various different reasons. Some people might see us and go, they're going to help me get motivated, they're going to help me get into a routine and I'm going to feel better about it, which is often the case. We can help you get into a consistent routine. Your friend might have done a Couch to 5K plan or something like that, and they give it to you and you think, right, this is my motivation to get out and get going. If you put that on someone else rather than on yourself, again, you're more likely to kind of to not maintain that consistent effort, because it's not come from you. So
well, that's a key thing as well for motivation. And when we go back to saying, well, what is motivation? And motivation is something that's taking you from where you are now to where you want to get to. But in order for that to work, or the most successful way to do that, is for the effort that you're putting in to be consistent. There's no point it being like, you go mad for a week and then you just die off because you're not properly motivated towards that. You're using maybe external motivators that aren't giving you the feedback. And that's where we were saying about how like a generic training plan isn't necessarily a training plan, because it's never giving you any feedback. It doesn't know you, it doesn't know how you respond. So it's more a generic training plan is just a piece of paper that's educating in you a method to get from A to B.
And if you've already got the intrinsic motivation, then that might be enough for you. You go, right, this is my rules, I'm sticking to it. If you don't have that internal sense of why you're doing something and how much you want to do something, and you're putting that all on that plan, I've got my bit of paper, it's magic, it's going to help me, it's going to solve everything, it's probably not going to work for a long enough amount of time for you to become consistent, for this to become a habit, and for you not to need motivation anymore, because it's just something that you do.
I found, and we'll mention, this came from a TED Talk that I listened to quite a while ago. I found it was really useful, nice short TED Talk. We'll put the link for this up in the notes as well. It was called The Psychology of Self-Motivation, and presented by a really good guy called Scott Geller, who was a fantastic speaker, really exciting, and quite nice old boy, down to earth. And he put forward that there's kind of 3 questions that you can ask to check in with yourself and see if you are motivated or you feel empowered to do something. And these were actually, I asked myself these questions on the spine race. When we were a couple of days in, I then left one of the checkpoints after we'd had some sleep, and I'd dropped right back in sort of 4th place. The others were like 3 or 4 hours ahead of me, and I was kind of not quite sure what to do next. And so I pulled these questions from the back of my mind and said, right, what do you want to do? And it was, the main question was, do I want to, can I win? Can I go on from where I am now to winning this race. And, the first question was, well, do I believe that I can do that? Do I believe I've got it in me to do that, as far as do I have that capability? And, I went through this process and the answer to that question was yes, I do. But that's not enough. Just believing that you can do it isn't necessarily always enough. So the next question was, do I believe or know what I need to do in order to win? So I had to work out the maths of how quickly I need to move to, one, be able to catch up with the others, and to get past them and maintain that as well. So I had to do the maths. I had to work out what sort of pace I needed to do and all the rest of it. And I knew from the pace that I was doing that I could do it. So I knew the steps that I needed to take to get there. And then the final one, which was actually really, really important, because if you can't answer yes to this, then you'll probably fall a bit flat. And that is, do I believe that the things that I need to do to get me there, the effort that it's going to take, the sacrifices I'm going to have to make, or how uncomfortable it might be, do I think it's worth it? So do I think that all of that is worth winning this race? And to me, I was, the answer was yes, I do. So I'd gone through those and I felt so much more focused and motivated towards that. Obviously, things didn't work out, but it wasn't for lack of motivation. And I just think those three questions are always quite helpful to come back to with anything, really. Because if you are going to do something and work towards something, then you need to believe you can do it, know how to do it, and make sure that what you need to do is worth it in the end.
Yeah. So if for you at the moment it's hard to get out of the door, let alone plan on doing a massive epic thing, ask yourself those questions. If you already run and you just in a bit of a slump, do you believe you can do it? Well, if you've done it in the past, then yeah, of course you can. Do you know the steps you need to take to get you there? You need to get your running kit on and get out the door. Is it worth the effort and the actions to do it? Again, if you know what that feeling's already like to go out and run outside in the sunshine, then yeah, you'll know it's worth it. So yeah, it's a really helpful little system, isn't it? Even for something that seems like a small step, right up to a bigger thing like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the other thing to sort of keep in mind is that it doesn't, the outcome or the goal or whatever that is, that doesn't necessarily have to dictate whether all of the effort that you've put in, all of the time you sacrificed and all the rest of it, if you, say for example, you're aiming for a, 3.5 hour marathon time. So you do all your training, you put all the effort in, you get out the door, you get up early, you don't see your family as much as you maybe wanted to do, all of that. And the success for that isn't necessarily just about hitting that time, because you've motivated yourself from where you are now in your potential, comfort circle, area of, happiness or not happiness, but area of comfort. You've pushed yourself out of that place by motivating yourself towards this goal. So even if you did 3:35, you've still gone a heck of a long way out of your comfort zone to achieve what you've achieved. So it isn't just about success or failure being a kind of yes or no. I think anything that you do to move yourself away from where you are in your comfort zone is a success. And I think that ties into, your motivation for that.
Ties into intrinsic, extrinsic, doesn't it? Because it's not all about the numbers, it's not all about the outcome, it's about the process, which is again what we talked about with the long-term planning. If you enjoy the process and enjoy the steps that it takes you to get there, or even if you don't necessarily enjoy them in the moment, but you've done something that you can be proud of, then it doesn't matter what the outcome is, because that whole journey is taking you somewhere completely different.
So what podcast were you going to mention?
So the podcast that I find really interesting, and it's not just about motivation, it's quite an inspiring podcast, but the guy's story is really interesting in terms of how to motivate yourself out of a situation that you're in that might seem impossible. So it's another Rich Roll podcast, and I can't remember what number it is, but the guy that he interviews is called John McAvoy. He's an English guy, and just very briefly, he was a big criminal. It was the way his life was going, there was really no alternative. He got himself into a lot of trouble. He was in and out of jail a couple of times and ended up being in jail for a massive chunk of his life in a very high security prison with really not a lot of options. But the way he chose to take his path, he motivated himself to do something rather than just sit and stew. Having worked in a prison, I know how easy it can be for an inmate to just sit and do nothing and sleep their day away. And this guy, he ended up basically, once he came out of prison, he's now a Nike sponsored triathlete. Having never been into sport at school or as a child, he learned his craft in prison when he had nowhere to go and nothing else to do. So we might feel like we're trapped at the moment. We might feel like, what's the point? We don't know what's coming. How can I get motivated when I don't know what's around the corner? This guy could have been in prison for the rest of his life. He didn't know whether he was going to be or not, but he chose to motivate himself to do something because he knew it would make him feel better, and be a better person, and it would give him something to strive for. So yeah, John McAvoy on the Rich Roll podcast. Cool. Really interesting story.
I'm going to listen to that because you mentioned that a few times now.
Yeah,
I will listen to that one. So I think, the motivation and the goals that we kind of touched on that last week as well with long-term planning, but your goals or whatever you're aiming towards is so important, because if they aren't the right ones, then you're going to struggle to answer yes to all the 3 questions, and you're also going to struggle to find that internal intrinsic motivation, because the most powerful motivator is that internal one that is quite an emotional, could be an emotional connection as well. So I think setting goals and knowing what you want to achieve, being in line with your values and what you want to do, not what other people want you to do, is really, really important to understand that as well.
That's something to bear in mind at the moment, isn't it? Don't necessarily be led down paths that other people are suggesting for you just because you can't see any other option. There's some challenges at the moment some are fantastic. I've been doing some with my club, and they're great motivators, and it helps you feel part of your club and your group and everything. But if it was something that was vastly different or much harder than I was aiming to do at the moment, I wouldn't do it, because that could be detrimental to what my ultimate goal is. So don't be pushed into or feel that you have to do things that you don't want to do or that don't serve a purpose. Do the things that you find fun, that you're excited about, but don't feel that just because everyone else is doing it, you have to do it.
And that's not going to carry you through long term either, is it?
No.
And when we've got our eye on what's happening in 6 months to a year's time, then if we can put in small things into place now, they're going to carry us through that, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
What do you say about exercise?
What did I say about exercise?
The fact that we can go out and exercise, we can set all these goals.
It's because my little bit of paper's not turned over. So one of the things that John McAvoy said that really stuck with me was that it's a privilege. that he's physically able to do it, he thinks is an honour, which I think is an amazing perspective to have. Someone that was stuck in prison for 10 years in a tiny little room feels privileged because he can move his body in ways that other people can't. And that's something I think we really need to remember, regardless of who you are, whether you're an elite athlete or not. If you're physically able to get outside and do the thing you love, then go and do it. There's no reason not to. We're very, very lucky. Look at it as something that you get to do. It's not something that you have to do. You are able to do it, and that's a real it's a real privilege.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not like hoovering.
No. Why would you bring that up?
You have to hoover, don't you? It's not
True. Yeah. It's quite hard to motivate for that one. Well, depending on what floats your boat,
like
you know.
Yeah. Not for me.
Cool. Okay. I think we'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at hoovering. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you for watching the videos that we've been doing so far. So this was session number 16, so we've done a good few now, which we've really enjoyed doing. We're going to keep doing them, and maybe not for a week. We might just do a couple of weeks and see how that goes. We've still got lots of things that we wanted to discuss, and a few people have asked if we can do certain things as well. And so we'll keep them going. So please, if you like these videos and you want to keep watching them, then please subscribe to the channel, the YouTube channel, and share them as well with people. That'd be really nice, and let us know how you get on and what you find motivates you as well. We'd be interested to hear that. Anything else, Kim? Okay.
I'm not going to talk about cleaning up anymore.
No, hoovering. All right, thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.